members of the subcommittee. I'm talking today on House Bill 2192, the Public School Building and Facility Modernization. House Bill 2192 addresses the critical need for public school and modernization. Every locality in the Commonwealth has a school needs or needs that aren't being adequately addressed. This bill will help one of my home jurisdictions, Montgomery County, to address the capital needs for its schools. House Bill 2192 does not request state funding. Instead, this legislation creates a new paradigm for building public schools and facilities using a creative way of the private sector. Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, the private sector has come forward with a tool for localities to help address public schools. The private sector has shown us how to use energy-positive schools, and that can save about a third of the cost on traditional models for building schools. This private sector model uses federal investment tax credits for solar installation, federal new market tax credits, and opportunity zones. It helps reduce the debt service and the operations cost by about more than 50%. See here, House Bill 2192 also provides that utilities will be negotiated agreements with local energy providers where they buy back the excess power. And finally, the legislation provides two financing options for private developers using local IDAs or EDAs or the Virginia Small Business Financing Agency. Mr. Chairman, it looks like the stakeholders have worked this out. This bill started out a little different. That's why we have a substitute. And at the proper time, and I'm not aware of any opposition. Chip Dix has helped bring this forward, and he's here to speak on the bill also, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion to adopt the substitute. Properly second. All in favor, say aye.
I'd like to hear from you.
Any questions for the panel at this time? I know a number of you have worked together on this, and anyone to speak for the bill?
I can speak for the bill. If there's no opposition, though, I know you've got a busy docket.
Any questions from the committee and no fiscal impact?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to hear from Mr. Dix or anyone else who wants to speak for the bill.
So, Mr. Chairman, Chip Dix on behalf of Atwater Infrastructure and also First Floor. And what this bill does is to create, through a private sector structure, it creates an opportunity for energy positive buildings, and school divisions would invest and look at that and evaluate whether that would work. It can cut the cost of building a school about by 1/3. And so between that, and particularly if you build schools in opportunity zones or with new market tax credits, you can cut the cost of a school as much as 50%. This paradigm has been used in North Carolina successfully, and we'd like to have the paradigm put into Virginia law to use it in Virginia. And we've worked with the school boards and school divisions and other stakeholders, and we believe that we have a vehicle that everybody's comfortable with moving forward.
Mr. Chairman, you know what this bill does is change the math for local governments. It allows access private developers with capital, and also allows them to take advantage of federal tax code to make these buildings cheaper to build, cheaper to operate. So it's a real savings. I've looked at the math from North Carolina. It seems to be working well there, so we hope to try this here.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Rush. And if I may, this is local option. Nothing is forced upon anyone.
That's correct. There's nothing in this bill that says you can't do the traditional model, and I would assume some folks would. This is, as I butchered in my remarks, a tool in a toolbox.
Thank you, Dr. Rush. Anyone else to speak for or even against the bill? Committee members? We have a motion and properly seconded. Any discussion? All right, members, please cast your votes. Everyone voted. Carries the vote. Excuse me. Carries the vote. Votes roll. Pass 6-0. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee.
Right, Chairman, Delegate Gilbert.
Which would require the Library of Virginia to make available within 1 year of receiving those records. Currently, there's no limitation on when they have to produce that documentation. I think the only limitation is once it's completed. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, we are still waiting on all of the records from the Tim Kaine administration to be made available to the public. This is a transparency bill. It's intended to allow the public access to these records within a reasonable time frame. I would argue that waiting 10 years or more for these records to be produced is not a reasonable time frame, nor is it in the public interest. I would point out that there was about $600,000 in the last budget set aside for the library to upgrade technology that make digital catalogs available to the public. There is a fiscal impact of this bill. If you decide to act on it, I think it has to go to appropriations, but Chairman Jones has assured me that he's willing to work with us on this transparency bill, and frankly, I think the fiscal impact will decline once the library gets its head around its newfound responsibilities, and there are certainly much easier ways to do this and make this available than maybe some painstaking and maybe unnecessary time limits that are taking place right now. So someone on our staff remarked, I wish it was my line, but someone remarked that we've been through 10 variations of the iPhone and we're still waiting on the emails that were on Tim Kaine's BlackBerry to be made available to the public. And I think it's time now to change that. So that's the bill, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, sir. Any questions for the patron at this time? Anyone speak for the bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, Mark Hickman on behalf of the Virginia Press Association. We do support the bill, and we thank the delegate for your report.
Thank you. Anyone else speak for the bill?
Last minute. Megan Ryan with the Coalition for Open Government. We support the bill.
Good afternoon. I'm Sandy Treadway, the agency head for the Library of Virginia, and I'm here to assure you that we support the intent behind 1702. We're staunch proponents of transparency in government. That's what we do, and would like to do this. There is a qualification to that, however, and that is what Delegate Gilbert referred to, and that's the cost of doing this. Preparing gubernatorial records for public release is not as easy as it might sound, and we have very limited staff to do that work. First of all, it can take several months for us to receive the records. They come from servers, laptops, desktops, shared drives, other records keeping systems that an administration uses, and there are 400 to 450 people whose we have to do an inventory to make sure we got everything when VITA transfers those to us. But then the real time crunch comes for us in complying with Section 40.1-78 of the Virginia Public Records Act, which says that when something is transferred to the archives, anything that is still legally protected, any information in the code, is still protected. So we have to go through and make sure that items that are protected in the code are not released in the public. Just to give you some examples, there are records with personal and business records that have specific account numbers and social security numbers, criminal justice, investigative information, the findings of the medical examiner's office, personnel files, proprietary records and trade secrets, procedures followed by the Executive Protection Unit, Homeland Security and terrorism responses, and many, many others. If the library were to release gubernatorial records with that information in there, there's a potential for serious liability and breaches of security for the Commonwealth. Once we do all that, we then also have to convert all those files to PDFs, which is what they have to be in to go into the digital asset management system that Delegate Gilbert referred to, and that we are grateful to the General Assembly for the funding for last year. We are keenly as frustrated as anybody else and would like to streamline the review of these records, and we are participating in a research project with a Canadian university that is trying to develop an artificial intelligence tool to help pull out this privacy protected information. It looks extremely promising, but it will not completely eliminate the need for human interaction. also a cost association with using that tool, and we simply don't currently have the resources for that. Just to give you an idea, we get, from Governor Kane's administration, we got 0.67 terabytes of information. From Governor McDonnell, it was 1.77 terabytes, and from Governor McAuliffe, 2.65. So it's growing. At some point, it's got to level off. There's only 24 hours in a day, but we also get paper records, and that's what people don't realize. We have 820 boxes, big cubic foot boxes of paper records from Governor McDonnell and McAuliffe that we still are working on. So if we were to have the resources, which are the Department of Planning and Budget has done a fiscal impact statement. If we were to get those resources, I feel fairly confident within a year we could clear the backlog and then hopefully be able to stay current every 4 years when we get gubernatorial records. So the fiscal impact means a lot to us.
Thank you for your testimony. All right, anyone else to speak for the bill? Against the bill? Any questions from the committee or any further discussion? No?
Bob Shippey, Mr. Chairman, we support the bill at Sierra Club. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Committee members?
Mr. Baker, a question?
Sure, Chairman.
Delegate Gilbert, why 1 year? Is there a, just pull that out of the,
Well, I mean,
Sure.
any line that any of us drew would be, in theory, arbitrary, right?
Sure.
So the line that's currently drawn was not arbitrary at all. It was when you're done looking at all the records, release them all. And again, we were waiting 10 years for some of these things. So somebody has to draw a line somewhere. And again, I'm happy to work with the library and the Appropriations Committee and the Senate Finance Committee on getting them the resources they would need to make sure they can do this. But we think a year after the end, I understand there's a lag time. The bill calls for a year after they receive the records that they would have to be released. So the several months it takes to collect those records would not come into play. It would be a year from the time they receive them. I just think if they have the resources, a year is certainly long enough.
Thank you. Any further questions for the patron? Committee members?
Move to report. Second.
Have a motion and properly seconded. Any discussion? Report and refer.
Report, refer.
Properly seconded. All right. It's a proper motion. Members cast your votes. Everyone voted. The chair's vote. Thank you for working on this, Delegate Gilbert.
Thank you.
Okay. Delegate Knight. 23, Delegate Knight is not here. Delegate Tran. 2494.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. I look forward to talking with you about House Bill 2494. You may recall I presented this bill last year, and at that time, the Uber chairman recommended that the FOIA Council review the bill. And this summer, the FOIA Council voted to recommend the bill, and I appreciate the opportunity to present it again today. I do have some line amendments.
Motion to adopt the line amendment. Do we have a second? Motion probably second. All in favor say aye. Opposed no. Amendment bill is before us.
Thank you. So let me give you kind of the context for the bill, and then I can talk about the line amendments we've made today.
She needs to read the
Oh, sorry.
Actually, we've probably already seen them here before. Most of us have talked to you. So if you don't mind reading the line amendments.
Mr. Chairman, on line 51, after agency 2, strike collect or. On line 54, after such, strike collection or. On line 86, after education 2, strike collect or. On line 88, after such, strike the remainder of line 88 and through or on line 89. At the beginning of line 99, strike collect or. On line 101, after such, strike the remainder of line 101. On line 111, after 16.12, strike the remainder of line 111. and on line 114, after such, strike the remainder of line 114.
Okay. Delegate Tran, can you please explain the amendments?
Sure. So in FOIA, after the discussion in FOIA committee, and in further talking actually with Delegate Davis about some of his concerns from that conversation this summer, what I did was talk with the DLS counsel to FOIA and also the counsel for the subcommittee today about how can we just tighten the language just a little bit to make sure that we are clarifying that we are not able to disseminate any data we have around individuals' religious beliefs and affiliations. So it's just to tighten it and tweak it a little bit, and I think it still stays within the intent of the conversation at FOIA committee this summer. So this bill overall, so all the, for everybody who doesn't have a copy, all of it's the same amendment, just at different parts in the bill because they appear multiple times. So this bill would prohibit Virginia state government from disseminating information about individuals' religious beliefs and affiliations to the federal government if the federal government would use that data for the purpose of compiling a list, registry, or database of individuals based on religious affiliation, national origin, or ethnicity, unless they are specifically required to do so by state or federal law. The ability to worship freely without fear of persecution is a core tenet of the founding of our country, and Virginia has a very special place in that history. The Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom was enacted into law in 1786, and that statute guaranteed freedom of religion to people of all faiths. It was a precursor to the Free Exercise Clause of the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, which gives us our freedom to worship. As Virginians, we're very proud of the role we have to ensure religious liberty in our country, and as you know, this statute is the only document enshrined on the walls of the House chamber. So we must continue to do what we can to protect every Virginian's ability to freely worship without fear of alienation and persecution. And our religious identity and affiliation is just private information that should not be used against us. So there are just a couple of places in the code currently where state entities are generally able to collect data on religious identity and to disseminate the data with the consent of those individuals. This includes institutions of higher education and correctional facilities. In some instances, it may be really important to collect and share this information. So for example, I would think a student applying to a university may want to acknowledge their religious belief in their application and consent to that data being shared because they want to be considered for scholarship programs. But there's nothing in the code at this point that specifies that the university or other agency within the Commonwealth cannot be compelled to share this data with the federal government when asked for the purpose of creating a list, registry, or database. And another question that came out of the FOIA subcommittee hearing was whether or not, was just to make sure that we would follow any federal laws. So that's why we did update the draft legislation to address that concern. So my constituents and community organizations like the Family Foundation, the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy, and the All Dulles Area Muslim Society and others support this legislation. And several of them are here to make comments in support of this bill. As government officials, we need to affirm that all Virginians that we are managing responsibly the data that we are, we have collected, and to ensure that all Virginians are able to freely worship without fear of persecution. To quote an esteemed member of this committee, this is at its heart a none-yetto, which is none of your business. Thank you. I didn't say it with the right twang, but.
Just a question for the patient.
Yes, sir.
Did you just refer to a certain member of this panel as an esteemed member?
Quite possibly, yes. Yeah. So welcome your questions and discussion.
Any questions from the committee? Motion to report and properly seconded. Anyone speak for? Yep, thanks. Pretty good shape right now.
That's a good chance. So can I at least
Anyone speak against the bill?
Can I just have you stand? They've come, some of them have
Please,
come
please
from
do.
a long way.
Everyone that's here to speak in favor of the bill, can you please stand up at this time? And Thank you. I'll get trained. All right, we have your sign-up sheet. And Delegate Lopez. Delegate Fowler, I'm going to pass it to you. If you don't mind, you have to sign one of this book. Get it off the back.
Esteemed Chairman.
Watch him, he hits harder than I do. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, 2398, which is a very small business definition issue that affects not a large but a significant number of procurement and small business issues in the Commonwealth. The problem is this: when we certify small, women, and minority-owned businesses, Virginia currently defines a small business as fewer than 250 employees or less than 10 million in annual gross receipts averaged over 3 years. This definition is extraordinarily broad. In fact, under this definition, 95% of all businesses in Virginia qualify as small. 250 employees or 10 million in annual revenue. The system is currently easily manipulated, allowing businesses to be certified for either having fewer than 250 employees or 10 million annual receipts allows companies to manipulate their employment numbers while making significant economic gains and accessing preferential procurement opportunities in the state. For example, one company in Maryland, McManus Incorporated, has only approximately 19 employees, but 4.5 billion, with a B, in annual receipts, and is certified as a SWAM or Small Women and Minority-Owned Business in Virginia. The solution is change, at least part of it, is to change or to and. And that would require companies to have both less than 250 employees and less than 10 million annual gross receipts. This change will only affect a small number of certified Virginia businesses in Virginia and a much larger percentage of businesses from out of state. In total, we're talking about only around 760 businesses out of approximately 15,000 that are certified as SWAM in Virginia. So that's the bill. That's the very small fix. We've talked about SWAM procurement and small women and minority-owned businesses for a few years now. And this bill isn't a comprehensive fix like I think we need, but it's a small fix that at least gets rid of the most egregious bad actors in the state who are, honestly, I think, gaming the system. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate Lopez. Do members have any questions for the patrons? Is anyone in the audience who supports the bill? Is there anyone in the audience? Yes, sir.
Excuse me. My name is Al Bowers. Mr. Chairman, other esteemed members of this committee. I'm going to call you esteemed too. I think Delegate Lopez has hit a small nail on the head. Tiny pebbles, just a small change, because it is being hijacked. And as long as you leave it like it is, you're part of the hijacking. Please support this bill. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Anybody else want to speak in favor of the bill?
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Rebecca Key on behalf of the City of Virginia Beach. We support this bill. We have a limited number of resources to work with small women and minority-owned businesses to make sure that they understand how government works and that they understand how to do business with the city. And those resources are limited, much like everybody else. And so a bill like this allows us to focus on those businesses that really need our assistance to survive and to do business with the government.
Thank you. Does any of the members have any questions for the patron?
Mr. Chairman. So, Doug Lopez, you've worked pretty tirelessly, I would say, in this space, this legislative space over the last several years. Can you tell me, just sort of from a macro level, how this fits in with your general philosophy on small business? And, you know, we've talked about micro issues in the executive order and the federal procurement that may be preferable, frankly, than the system that we have in Virginia that we need to address at some point. I don't know if we'll get there, but could you just sort of take a step back and bring us all up to speed in that manner?
If I get too far in the weeds, it might hurt my bill.
Well, we need to know that.
Well, here's the thing. I was honored to serve as the Assistant Administrator of the U.S. Small Business Administration for a period of time. And I worked extensively on small business procurement issues and what we know as the NAICS codes, how we actually define small businesses around the country. And my argument for years has been Virginia should simply accept the federal standards because they are updated every 3 years for every industry and every subcategory of industry by region in the country. Now, there's been significant pushback on that because of concerns about micro business issues in the Commonwealth. And I respect those positions. And in fact, it's a debate that we've been having now for years. And we've had fairly frank and robust conversations out of session. We've had monthly meetings for a period of years on several different areas of this topic. And it is a huge topic. What this bill does is something that I worked on with a couple members of this committee a few years ago, which was to at least take the small baby step of saying, let's get rid of the worst actors. Let's get rid of the people who are truly manipulating the system. Because our one-size-fits-all approach to small business procurement is not the way to go. 250 employees or 10 million in annual revenue is over 90% of all businesses in Virginia. So who gets hurt under our SWAM procurement system, which is a multi-billion-dollar procurement system? Actual small businesses, actual micro businesses, actual minority-owned businesses. Because if everybody's small, there's no small business. And so, like I said, this is a very small fix, changing or to and it gets rid of some of the worst actors.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Just one question for my edification here. Lopez. Depending on the type of business you may be in, you could have obviously have revenues of $10 million, but be considered quite small in that particular industry or
right.
or trade. So I think which was maybe one of the reasons we originally went in this direction was to try to, because again, when you're talking about all the types of businesses that are out there, it's to have a one-size-fits-all definition of a small business instead of perhaps breaking it down by sector. Doesn't make sense. Can you please explain that?
Yeah, well, our one-size-fits-all approach right now is overly broad. You're exactly right. What I've always been saying is when we're comparing strawberries to bananas to oranges, a small, heavy construction company is defined at the federal level around several $100 million in annual revenue, whereas a small pizza company is defined as 5 people, whereas a tech company in California is defined as a certain number of people and $50 million, whereas a small tech company in South Carolina is defined as $5 million and 10 people. And so when we're comparing strawberries and bananas and apples and oranges to grapes, our one-size-fits-all approach is not doing anyone any favors. in the Commonwealth, and it's simply not helping true small businesses. We have to have this larger discussion about how we truly define what a small business is from sector to sector, industry to industry, in subcategory to subcategory. But right now, this bill is not doing that. This bill is simply saying, let's get rid of the worst actors by simply changing one word. Or, and to or to and.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Miyares.
Motion to report.
Second.
The motion is report and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, the members shall vote.
Thank you very much.
7-0.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Thank you. Delegate Torres.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, sir, and good afternoon. I have House Bill 2345, this is Virginia Public Procurement Act. The Virginia Public Procurement Act, local labor use requirement for certain construction contracts requires that under the Virginia procurement that every public body which engages in procuring contracts for construction project costs in excess of $500,000 paid for in whole by state or local funds include in this specification a requirement that at least 60% of the employees employed by the contractors and subcontractors for the construction project be from the local labor market. The bill defines local labor market to mean every locality in Virginia and any county outside of Virginia if any portion of that county is within 75 miles of the Virginia border. It also provides any contractor or subcontractor that cannot meet this requirement and has taken certain necessary steps may obtain a waiver of the requirement from the Virginia Employment Commission. The bill allows contracts for construction entered into, renewed, or amended by a public body under the Virginia Public Procurement Act on or after July 1st, 2019. And primarily what we're seeking to do is we're saying that there are certain projects we're using state funds, and citizens of Virginia should be included in the workforce. That's it.
Any other members have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. And I spoke to Delegate Torres before, and it's very interesting. I think it's almost kind of Donald Trumpish with regards to the protectionary measures. But I did have a question, and Delegate, I forgot to bring it up earlier, but you mentioned any county 75 miles outside. Would you be open to a friendly amendment to change that to locality? I'm just thinking some of those things are cities. Like in Virginia Beach, we don't have counties, we're just a city.
Certainly, Delegate Davis, I would be open to that friendly amendment.
Thank you. At the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman, I may make that. Mr. Chairman, I would move to replace, and I may need the attorney on this one, but whenever we use the term county, so it'd be line 20, the term county, and in the place appropriate, change the locality.
Mr. Chairman, on line 19, after any strike
say that, Virginia, gives out quite a bit of funds to local projects. We as construction workers would like to make sure that some of that money comes back to employ us, to build those projects. We were trained by Luna to work in the construction field. We trained quite a few of us in the area, and we just want to go to work. We want to make sure that we're counting the projects as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Gwendolyn Davis. I represent an organization called Equipping Businesses for Success Institute in Hampton Roads, and we support the bill.
Thank you. Is anybody here to speak in opposition to the bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Gordon Dixon. I'm the director for the Associated General Contractors. We represent, sorry about that, about 300 contractors, subcontractors, and associate members across Virginia. While we understand the intent of the bill, we are opposed to the bill, mandating that employers must hire their employees based on their residence. Seems a rather extreme reach. This is a requirement that's going to mandate that all contractors must now do another bureaucratic process when they're trying to manage their risks and ensure where their employees are coming from. Our contractors employ people from all across the place. They do intend to hire people locally when they can. It reduces their labor costs when they do that, so that's the way they want to do this. Our members also do business in other states, and this is starting off a state war. If you start retaliating against one locality against another, in case you're going forward this. For those reasons, we oppose the bill. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Rob Bohannon representing the Virginia Transportation Construction Alliance. We represent over 300 engineers, architects, concessionaires, and folks that build and maintain Virginia's roads. Our biggest concern is, again, understanding the intent of the bill is road construction is very specialized, and there are often specialized crews that are brought in to do bridge work, large-scale drainage work. You might have a project where you need to move 8 million cubic yards of earth, and you don't want to just hire someone who isn't experienced in that level of construction. So for that reason, we're opposed to the bill, just because we want to make sure we get the most qualified people to do the work. And quite frankly, I think like the previous speaker said, I mean, it is cheaper to hire local, and if we can find the folks locally, that's great. But if not, we need to be able to go outside and find the right people.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, sir. Does anybody else like to speak in opposition? Does any of the members have any questions for the patron?
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What we're seeking to do is to ensure that Virginians are hired when we're using taxpayers' money. And one of the concerns that we have, and I don't want to belabor the point or begin to criticize contractors and subcontractors, but we also recognize that they go out of state to get cheap labor, and then our people are not employed. And that is what we want to avoid, particularly when we're utilizing state funds.
Thank you, Delegate Torrey. The chair will entertain a motion report.
Second.
A motion to report, which has been seconded.
Mr. Chairman, just discussion on the motion. So, Delegate Torrey and I serve on appropriations, and while there's not a letter now, because of the testimony that I heard, there may be one. So we just want to be prepared for that. If that is the pipeline, and I just haven't received it. The motion would be to report and refer appropriations at the appropriate time. We can do that in full as a substitute motion if I were to get that letter.
If we have a substitute motion to report and refer.
No, I'm saying just, if the motion is to report now, then you can act in that manner. But at full committee, we may have to have a substitute motion if we get that letter.
Thank you, Delegate Peace. The motion before us is to report to the full committee. Members shall cast their vote. on your bill, fails support on a 3-3 vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You know, Dr. Torrance, I believe you had another bill that you wanted to strike.
Yes.
Dr. Torrance, he has House Bill 2475, which he wants to strike from the guidelines. Any motion to strike? Gotta wake these guys up. Do we have a second on the motion to strike? Work with me here. All right, the initial vote.
Soggy here. All right, Dr. James. Welcome, neighbor.
Good afternoon, office mate, Mr. Chairman. Should I call you esteemed too?
Just don't call me what my wife calls me.
Just teasing, sir. Thank you, members of the committee as well. This bill, House Bill 1892, takes a somewhat different route. I would call it complementary to what you just reported out, but a much more different scale. House Bill 1892 is a product of a work group that was established at the end of last session when we brought together with the support of the small business community and the state staff, and we met several times, and we came up with what we call a more comprehensive view of how can we help them. The bill basically, and I have several people who have come up to testify, and they can give you real live comments about what this bill can do and their history. One of the committee members is passing out some talking points because there are some moving parts, but we think it's a good bill. The bill basically addresses two issues that came up. One was we wanted to codify Executive Order 20, which has had a tremendous impact on small and minority businesses throughout the state. Just some numbers which are in your talking point, but they have increased from 1.5% or 75 million statewide for all women and minority business owners to 5 billion issued annually to 3 billion, or a 10% at the close of 2018. So you can see that's had a really big impact, and the business community that were in the meetings wanted to do that. Secondly, it also takes an approach to replacing the current definition of small businesses with a new certification for the small business called the Small Business Eligibility Standards, which would be based on categories. It's similar to the model that they use in Maryland. And that's what this bill basically does. It's got a little longer than usually my bills, but I think this bill sets the stage for a tremendous support for the small business community, the SWAM community that is targeted at, and we think that it would more accurately reflect what our small business look like in size and gross receipts. So that's what it is, and I think at this point I can take questions or I can ask. They've already lined up behind me to have them make some comments. Is that okay, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just a quick question, as far as the stakeholder group, who was involved in the group?
Do you have a list? It was chaired by, it was chaired by Tracy Wiley, who was the director, and we had approximately 22 members. Myself, Delegate Lopez was on that group, Most of you all were here,
Yes.
and it was
Northern Virginia business owners
and we had some university and community folks on it.
and DGS.
I can get you that, Mr. Chairman, from, they're not here, but, DGS was there as well.
Okay.
So, you want to
Thank you, Dr. James. And any questions for the patron at this time? No questions, seeing that, folks to speak for the bill.
Well, Mr. Chairman, my name is John, and I'm the pastor emeritus at the Third Baptist Church in Portsmouth, Virginia. I'm here today to ask for your support of the Small Business Procurement Enhancement Program, House Bill 1892. And to thank Delegate James for introducing this important economic development legislation for businesses in Virginia. There are two disparity studies of record conducted by the Commonwealth, which clearly shows the economic injustice in Virginia's procurement contracting program for blacks, Hispanics, Indians, Asians, other ethnic group, and white women-owned small business. For 10 years, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, we have come with the same request to deal with this issue of injustice and the lack of fairness. How many more years will we have to come? There will be a change, and we hope that it can come from you. And we believe House Bill 1892 will bring all small businesses to common ground and address the disparity. And I call on you today to vote yes for supporting this measure so that we'll not have to come back time and time again. Studies have already been conducted. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of this fine committee and those who serve our Commonwealth well. Mr. Chair and subcommittee members, I'm Dr. Leo Whitaker. I'm the Executive Minister of the Baptist General Convention of Virginia, here in Richmond, Virginia. The Baptist General Convention comprises of 1,079 churches throughout the Commonwealth, 29 associations which make up those churches, and we are known nationally and for our financial support of various ministries, programs, and missions throughout the Commonwealth, as well as our ongoing educational services through Virginia Union School of Theology, the Lock Carrick Foreign Mission Convention, and our other constituent faith groups through the Virginia Council of Churches. I'm here today to join the clergy from Hampton Roads. You met our senior-most person and Dr. Fleming, as well as those who gather from other faith, who are here to support this moment of 1892. We want that every minority-owned business, every woman owning a minority business, every small business, every citizen who is a part of the Commonwealth will be able to hear you say in this subcommittee yes to the recommending passages of House Bill 1892. When small businesses are successful, our communities remain healthy and strong and providing jobs to those who need them. Every small business owner should have access to bidding and winning state procurement contracts issued to the private sector. To do otherwise is an economic injustice that must be corrected. I hope it will be the pleasure of this subcommittee to support this measure, and we welcome the patronage of this legislation. We thank Delegate Matthew James and all the members who are co-sponsors, and we ask that you will firmly support 1892, a bill that has been around a long time, especially when we hear the other bills that have been passed, and grateful for what you've done for Delegate Lopez And we hope that you do the same for Delegate James. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and the members of the subcommittee. My name is Veronica Coleman. I am the senior pastor of New Jerusalem Ministries in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I'm here to represent the Virginia Beach Interdenominational Ministers Conference and here to ask your support for House Bill 1892. As has been said, this bill would codify an administrative policy that works and which has been documented by the state to give women and minority-owned businesses an opportunity to bid and win state government contracts. As you've heard from Delegate James, the amount of contracts have gone from 1.5% of about $75 million to over 10.3% in just 4 years. And so we know that Executive Order 20, as implemented, definitely is a step in the right direction. I want to say that this is not a partisan issue. It is an issue of fairness. It is an issue of equity, of leveling the playing field to give all businesses the opportunity to compete and to win over $6 billion annually in discretionary spending by the state with the private sector for goods and services. We need the support of our legislators in the General Assembly and the administration to make Virginia the state where all businesses can start, sustain, and grow their businesses. This bill gives women and minority-owned small businesses that opportunity in the Commonwealth. So I ask that you would please show your support today by voting yes to House Bill 1892. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the subcommittee. My name is Lorena Justin. I am a business owner in the Newport News, and I serve on the planning committee for Equipment Business for Success Institute in Hampton Roads. Our organization has worked to advocate for increased access to state and local procurement contracts since 2008. We ask you that you please vote to this bill to the full General Laws Committee because we know it will work for women and minority-owned small businesses in Virginia. And we thank you for that. Bye.
Mr. Chairman and other members of the podium, I'm going to be very short. I represent about 1,800 members in business in and around the state. And we wholeheartedly support this bill. After we had a chance to meet with Delegate James and others from the Department of General Services, we all came to a conclusion that this is the way to go. So we ask that you wholeheartedly support this bill.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee. My name is Annette Ross. I'm an employee of a minority-owned business, JMI, and I've served in the supply diversity and inclusion industry for 12 years. I know the importance of minority and women-owned businesses succeeding in our communities. They are indeed the economic engine that provides jobs for our unemployed, and they give those individuals that have been incarcerated who come back to our communities jobs, a second chance to become productive, law-abiding citizens. This bill gives these businesses the opportunity to compete for state procurement contracts that can not only help them to grow, but sustain them in economic downturns in the economy. House Bill 1892 incorporates into law what we all know is working right now, not just for minority and women-owned small businesses, but for all small businesses in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I call on the members of this subcommittee to vote yes to House Bill 1892. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Gwendolyn Davis, and I am the Minority Women Business Enterprise Administrator for the Portsmouth Public School System. This bill before you today is so critical because, like Delegate Lopez said, we need to not have a single definition to put all of our small businesses in. This bill has the businesses by category based on the statistics for Virginia's business. We may have used the Maryland model, but this is a Virginia initiative. Not only that, but when women in the Commonwealth of Virginia and minority businesses only receive $75 million of over $5 billion issued in procurement contracts, there's a big problem. And not only are we trying to address that problem, but when you added the provisions of Executive Order 22, what we're talking about is going to work because it's working now. It's race and gender neutral, and it is working. And in Portsmouth, we have a race-specific program because our numbers were like the Commonwealth of Virginia. Yours were 1.50%, ours was 1.63%. It is egregious, according to the U.S. Justice Department. So we want to do what is right for our small business owners. Virginia should be a place where all business owners have an opportunity to start up, sustain, and grow their business, and also get some government contracting. Everybody knows when the government is in a recession or depression, the only people that have money to spend is the government. And so we are asking for the same access that our white male-owned businesses have had in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We just want a level playing field, and this bill will do that for us. It's already working. We're already getting $3.1 billion since the provisions of Executive Order 20 were implemented. It's working, and it's race and gender neutral. And it's the exact same thing that's happened in the Commonwealth. So we do hope that it will be the pleasure of this committee to say yes to this bill. I stand here on behalf of our chairperson, who is on our school board, and the members of our advisory committee to say, please vote yes to this bill. And I would ask all of our business owners that are here today from across the Commonwealth to please stand at this time and be recognized. Thank you for your time, and thank you, Delegate James, and the Chief Co-Patron, Delegate Jawan Ward, for introducing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your indulgence. You
Yes,
can
sir.
see we have some lively meetings.
All right, questions from the committees? Any questions so far? Anyone speak in opposition to the bill at this time?
Mr. Chairman, Nicole Rowley with NFIB, and I would say that we have some concerns about the bill. We've spoken with Delegate James, and actually the section of the bill that does deal with the definition of small business, that is a new approach. It's certainly something that we find intriguing, and unfortunately we weren't part of the working group that met in the fall to discuss that. And we do think it might have some merit, but we know that there are other bills that deal with the definition of small business before you. There were some unintended consequences, though, regarding the executive order that did shut out legitimate small business owners here in Virginia. I have a member with me, Melissa Ball, who I'd like for her to just give you a very brief summary of like the situation for her. And it's for those reasons that we have concerns with moving this bill forward. Specifically, the executive order, once it set up the micro business definition, it also created set-asides, and that language is here in this bill. Set-asides mean that 100% of any agency purchase under $10,000 had to be purchased by a micro business. Melissa will explain how that basically cut her out. No state business whatsoever. We've tried to have conversations with the previous administration, this administration, on looking for ways to try to fix those because we do feel that there's some unintended consequences. We do want to make sure that small business owners have the opportunity to do business with the state, and we just think that some of these things, like I said, were not really fully looked at when implemented. So at this point, let me have Melissa just give you a brief update of sort of where her position is.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I would stand before you to explain that I'm one of those individuals who's been completely blocked by pieces of work like this from doing any business with the Commonwealth. Prior to Executive Order number 20, we were able to conduct business with the Commonwealth because my category, office products and furniture, exists where there is a non-mandatory contract. So as long as I am a good, valuable choice to a procurement person, they can choose me as long as I'm competitive against the contract. And so we did about $1 million in revenue with the Commonwealth. When the order went into place, we were no longer allowed to do business with the Commonwealth. Our revenue is just a little over 3 million, far, far less than the 10 million that other statutes recognize. I have 23 and a half full-time employees, and this had significant impact on 2 sales reps and a couple customer service reps. We were no longer able to do business with them. So I understand the merits of legislation and procurement code, because Executive Order number 39 under Governor Warner's administration gave us a seat at the table and allowed us to be a part of the conversation and prove our point. But right now, I don't even have the opportunity to be at the table. This blocks me from even being there to be a part of the procurement process. So to any extent that this secures that micro executive order or puts in place, barring anyone with revenues of over 3 million, to put that in perspective, in my category, the SBA, small is 32 million, because big is so, so very big. Office products dealers that I compete with who are independent in this marketplace are $100 million companies or billion-dollar national or multinational companies. So for me to compete, my margins are very, very, very small. In order to service, for example, the Chesterfield County contract, my margin is about 6%. So when I deliver a $100 file cabinet, I make $6. I need a lot of $6 to pay the bills and put fuel in the trucks and turn the lights on. So I need a revenue amount that is significantly higher in order to play on that playing field. I'd be happy to answer any questions about it. But at this point, I'm unable to do business with the Commonwealth, and I would like to be allowed to be able to do business with the Commonwealth.
Thank you. Any questions for the patron at this time? Delegate Davis.
Sir, Mr. Chairman, just a quick question. Delegate, I appreciate kind of where you're going on this, and the categories remind me a little bit of the BPOL categories. And one thing I've always had a problem with localities is a business can qualify under multiple BPOL categories simultaneously. How does this, what happens if someone qualifies for, so if they make a product, if they manufacture the product, they sell it wholesale to a retailer, and they also sell retail out of that location, how do you delineate where they fall under if they actually do qualify for all 3 categories?
I think I know the answer to that, but I'll call a friend first.
I think those, it's either or, and if they gross that amount of revenue, then they would qualify. You know, it's sort of like the definition that we have now. If you have 250 employees and that's why that's put in there, to give the State Department of Small Business and Biodiversity, you know, the latitude to look at what you are doing in your business.
One quick follow-up, Mr. Chairman, if I may. So is it basically that they would just pick the largest category that they could fall in? So if I had, so if I was, so it looks like if ideally I'd like to be able to be manufacturing, wholesale is, well, maybe it's the other way around. If I'm manufacturing, I'd like to be maybe wholesale, more money. So I would basically have a small wholesale division to allow me to grab a bigger number, even though I was more of a manufacturing department.
Right, and it more accurately reflects what is really taking place in the Commonwealth. And the young lady who spoke previously, she would not be hurt by this bill.
Move to report.
Second.
We have a motion and properly seconded. Discussion? Need some committee discussion.
Losing my thing, I have a substitute motion. You make a motion to report?
We have a report and second.
We make a motion to lay on the table.
Second. Any discussion on that, Bill? Not debate, let's move on. Delegate James, thank you for doing that. We're going to take a vote, but I'd like to chat with you afterwards. All right. Lay on the table 5-3. Thank you, Delegate James, and let's like to chat with you over the course of the year.
I thank the committee, and I also would be remiss if I didn't thank the folks who came a long way to testify and the energy that they gave us over the past year.
Well, thank you, and thank you for everyone for being with us today.
Mr. Chairman, I have another motion.
Delegate Bowers.
Having voted on the prevailing side, on which we reported out, Delegate Lopez, House Bill 2394,
so we have a motion to report every department. My Delegate Lopez. So, all right. Cast your votes. All right, close the roll. Oh, close the roll. 7-0. Passes. All right. Delegate LaRock. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'll roll whenever you're ready.
Ready when you are, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I present to you House Bill 2804, which would instruct the amend the Virginia Public Procurement Act. I've asked the co-patron, Elizabeth Davis, to present this with me in as a technology-oriented bill. It would instruct all state agencies to include in every written contract for professional or information technology project services provisions requiring the contractor to use verification software to determine whether the hours billed for the work under the contract that is performed on a computer are legitimate. Such provisions shall specify that the agency will not pay for hours worked on a computer unless those hours are verifiable as legitimate by software, by data collected by the software. That's the kind of nuts and bolts and mechanics of it, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. The purpose of this, the goal. I, as an elected official, and I'm sure you as well, recognize that one of our primary responsibilities is to be good stewards of public resources. This bill will potentially save tens of millions of dollars with zero cost and zero risk. Overbilling cases amount to hundreds of millions of dollars in overbilling each year. We could save our state this money by simply requiring state contractors to provide the transparent verification of billing hours, as I just indicated is contained in the bill. Many invoices for professional time have been paid on the honor system, which seems a little bit primitive in a day and age when software such as this would preempt the need to do that on the honor system. This worker tracking software